Well, it's that time of the year again. SCR's last sneak peek was on March 17th. Yes, that was 2.5 months ago. The lack of communication from the nose candy team is somehow worse than the lack of communication from this girl I like, so I'm gonna make another speculation video. It's clear that SCR has had a sudden lack of updates since version 2.3 released in early January of this year. For context, that was 5 months ago, or maybe even 6, I've forgotten how to count. Since then, we've had 2 remesh updates, and that's it. To be fair to the Nose Candy Man, version 2.3 was one of the largest updates in the game's history. It added a new power mode system, 2 new extensions, connect semi-fast routes and trams, as well as a reworking of a massive amount of stations in the network, mainly in the Morganstown area. Aside from the 2 remeshes, we've had absolutely nothing after that, not even patch updates. The next update will take time, but surely we deserve to know at least something by now. Anyways, since I was bored and I have no content ideas, here are some of my ideas for version 2.4. Let's start off with some new features that I think could be implemented. First off, a smarter signaling UI. What this would do is essentially add additional information to platforms. It would tell the signaler which way the platform goes, whether it's bidirectional, and also whether it can or can't be used for terminating trains. A second signaling improvement would function kind of like GSMR, specifically for drivers to alert for upcoming junctions. It's a good way to bypass the Roblox chat as some users can't use it. It will have 2 modes, an automatic and a manual mode. The automatic mode would activate a TRTS-style alert when a train is approaching a junction with a signal at danger. It will manually be set to trigger when a train passes certain signals set right before a junction signal. When the train passes, the game will check the junction signal and if it is set to danger, alert the signaler. The manual mode will allow drivers to manually toggle this GSMR system via a button. The button would become available when the next signal is at a danger aspect, and it would allow drivers to contact signalers. This would be helpful if, for example, a driver accidentally closed doors on a red signal and got stuck at a platform. With the old system, the driver would have to wait for the signaler to notice himself. With the new system, the driver can immediately alert the signaler of the error and get clearance to proceed if it is safe. The last new potential feature I wanted to take a look at is the return of third rail. We know that SCR's devs don't really like working with third rail, but hear me out on this. What if we give the Whitefield line third rail electrification from the through platforms at Stepford UFC onward to Whitefield? The Class 710 would be added as a dual voltage train for use on the Whitefield line. It would perform a switch at Stepford UFC, utilizing its third rail capabilities. The UFC and Whitefield line could also receive some third rail branches, which would allow for the use of trains like the Class 444 and 458, which were previously withdrawn from the game. A similar feature could be added on a new Waterline branch, which would allow the Class 319s to utilize its dual voltage capabilities. The Class 319s in real life have dual voltage, and this was their main purpose on the Thameslink corridor, so this would be a neat addition to those trains. As we all know, Stepford County Railway has 5 operators, but that may not be the case in 2.4. Tramlink obviously isn't coming back, and Nightly Sleeper isn't really realistic, but Freight has long been debated as a potential operator in SCR, and I think this time it actually has a chance of being implemented, especially since we've seen more freight sidings be added in recent updates and reworks. So, how exactly would freight work? Existing freight infrastructure on the SCR map covers this yard at Newry Harbour, this yard at East Berley, a siding at Airport Parkway, and that's about it. The first part of the update will include 3 new freight terminals. The first one would be the Stepford Freight Yard, located somewhere between Stepford East or St Helens Bridge. It would serve as the logistics depot for Stepford, where mostly intermodal cars would stop, and then trucks would haul cargo into Stepford's commercial and industrial zones. A second yard would be placed at the Stepford International Airport, at a new cargo-only terminal. And finally, a third yard would be placed just after North Shore on the way to Lymm by the Sea, for cargo and logistics to Lymm by the Sea. This leaves us with a total of 5 functional yards. Freight trains will spawn at a new 3-lane siding at the airport cargo yard, featuring space for 15 to 20 cars worth of freight wagons. These freight trains would have the following available lines: R201 from the airport to Newry Harbour, R202 from the airport to Stepford East, R203 from the airport to Berrily, R204 from the airport to North Shore, R205 from Newry Harbour to North Shore, R206 from Stepford East to North Shore, and R207 from Berrily to North Shore. R201, 202, 203 and 204 would spawn at the airport cargo terminal, while for the other lines, players would spawn at the airport cargo terminal and then pick a direction to ECS2. The trains would be long freight car consists pulled by Class 66 locomotives, or who knows, maybe even Class 68s. They would have their acceleration set to be about 5 times slower and braking 2 times slower than normal trains, although to compensate, they will award extra points per stop. Due to the difficulty of adding individual cargo types, I think it would be best to have each train consist of either entirely intermodal cars or a mix of intermodal and material cars. Or better yet, have 2 variants, an intermodal and a material variant that would be allowed on different routes. These freight trains would actually make sense to fit behind the Game Pass because they're so big, but I think a more ideal method would be giving them a cost of like 10,000 points so that you can only really drive them if you've invested time into the game, to prevent trolling, but also to allow regular grinders to buy them. You can still shell out and buy a bunch of Robux to buy the freight trains, but if you don't want to pay with Robux, that's fine. You can play the game for tens of hours and unlock them. The first expansion I wanted to take a look at is the potential for new third rail lines. I think third rail would suit the Whitefield area and parts of the Waterline network. We could also ignore my previous suggestion of limiting third rail to beyond Stepford UFC, and allow the third rail to go along with the OHLE to Stepford Central to about 2 platforms which would have both electrification types, similar to London Euston. The Whitefield line is the perfect place to explore adding another suburban or rural branch, perhaps via the line of trees. Something like that could really work well on both Connect or Metro. As for Waterline, I think a third rail-based branch could be added to this area south of Greenslade and Whitney Green. I'm not exactly sure where it would branch off, but there's ample space here even for multiple lines if the devs decided to add them. That's a really good expansion area for Waterline, and the third rail in that area could be seen as just a leftover from an older era that was too costly to replace. They could also add an OHLE or diesel power line somewhere, but there wouldn't be many places to put it. Moving on to Connect, and specifically the Lymm by the Sea area. Every single area of the map has a branch, except for this part. I think the best place for a branch would be between Millcastle and West Wyvern. Looking from the POV of a train headed toward West Wyvern, there would be a branch to the right. Since this branch wouldn't violate Roblox's map boundaries, as it's actually moving closer to Stepford, it could be any size. It could be 10 stops, 5 stops, 1 station, perhaps multiple branches, served by express even, maybe a new operator. The options are endless. Diesel, electric, third rail, pick your favorite. It would also help fill a bit of the emptiness in this general area. Speaking of Lynn, I think Lynn deserves its own mini metro. It would obviously be challenging due to the map boundaries, but a Connect local style of line of a few stops would really help. Lynn is a hub for express, and the entire area from Lynn to North Shore is absolutely filled with skyscrapers and housing, not to mention beyond the actual station at Lynn by the Sea. Surely it should have some sort of metro-style commuter network, or at least something like Stepford Local before the metro update. And lastly, I want to take a look at two possible metro expansions. First off, what I have dubbed Metro North. It would go north of Stepford, basically in the big gap between Whitefield and Willowfield. A line of trees? Sure. Entirely new district of Stepford City? Sure. Identical housing suburbs served by Metro Line? Go right ahead. All of the options are there. A branch could be made in the core tunnels, but plenty of space exists between Beachley and Hemden Park, as well as between Stepford UFC and Woodhead Lane. Come on, Toby. I know I've been mad about you for the nose candy in the past, but this area needs some creativity. Snort some nose candy and spit something out. The second metro extension set we could see is obviously Tramlink extensions. Perhaps Tramlink would go south of Whitney Green instead of Waterline. Perhaps a turn could be made between Denton Road and Greenslade, having trams go along this specific road, running alongside the cars for several stations. Perhaps an entirely different tram line could be inserted somewhere into Stepford. The opportunities are truly endless, and I once again call on Toby to get working on them. If you need to, snort some nose candy, we won't be mad about it. And the final question, when is the update coming? The short answer is, we don't know. It could come tomorrow, it could come in 2 years, it could come never. The long answer is more complicated, but version 2.3 was a big enough update to the point where realistically, we aren't getting anything before autumn at the earliest. The current update gap in SCR is nothing to be concerned about. However, if we don't get a new sneak peek by early September, you should be concerned. That's it for this video, thank you for watching, and big thanks to my channel members whose names you can see on screen. Join the Discord server because I'm running low on members and I need to pump up my ego. I'm gonna go throw myself into a rat-infested pit now. Goodbye.